everyone at the Harvest Evening Celebration. I'm Chef Guido with Mazzone Hospitality, and I'm here to make bread with you. So we're going to start off by making sourdough. I have everything portioned out here. So we have 300 grams of flour, and it's very important that we have a digital kitchen scale. You don't want to do this in cups because it has to be very, very exact. It's almost like a science experiment, but it tastes way better. So we have flour. We need 6 grams of salt. We need 60 grams of starter, which is right here. Got a whole bunch made, ready to go. And we have 204 grams of water, milliliters of water. Same thing. And we are just going to bring that together. This is a very, very wet dough, so hope you like getting sticky. It's very hearty. It holds up really great if you were to make a bunch and freeze it. Perfect for the holidays to give as gifts. It comes back from the freezer almost like you freshly baked it. But it's very hearty bread. Slice it, use it for toast. That's my favorite. Slice it for sandwiches. You can make fancy decorations on top, give as gifts. But it's a little bit, it's different from the other breads. We're going to be making focaccia as well today. Focaccia is a little bit more fluffy and crispy on the outside, whereas sourdough is crispy on the outside, but it's just more hearty, has more of a chew all around. So once this comes into a ball, we are going to knead. You literally don't work out. This is the workout for the day. You want to keep, I would say, probably 15 minutes of heavy kneading, like thinking of someone that upset you recently and just kind of, no, I'm just kidding. So the way we knead is you have a sticky bowl of dough, which it'll get messy, it's fine. Take any nice wedding rings off because that's not fun. So you want to take the heel of your hand and push away from you, and then take your fingers and kind of use them as a claw to go back. And then turn it 90 degrees and do it again. I like to switch arms because, you know, you gotta get even muscles. So
15 minutes of heavy kneading later.
So once you knead, you take a little bit off and you stretch it like as if you're making a little tiny pizza. And you just want to check and see if you put it up to the light and you see if you can see little bits of sunlight, almost like light coming through stained glass. You can't see through it, but you can see where the sunlight is hitting it. And you just want to make sure that it's not ripping, that it stays together. Once that happens, then it's ready to go, and we're gonna have it rest for 3 hours. So once that's all set, you don't need a spray or flour or anything. You just literally put it right in the bowl, and we're gonna plastic wrap it and just let it sit on the counter 3 hours. Just go have more cocktails and go relax. Hard part's over. Okay, so this is my assistant, Pillsbury. He is a very active, bubbly sourdough starter. Sourdough starter is the only thing that leavens sourdough, so you don't get those little packets of yeast at the store or anything. It's literally just Pillsbury. And a starter is made from, what makes it a starter is wild bacteria and wild yeast that's in everywhere. It's in the air. And it's just fermented. It's literally just bread flour and water. Making it is a little bit of a process, but it's just like, that's why I named him. It's just another part of the family that you gotta feed him if you keep him out, or you put him in the refrigerator and feed him once a week, or you can put him in the freezer, feed him like once a year, then you just take it out every Christmas and go get him and make lots of bread. But this sourdough starter, I literally just fed him 8 hours ago, so he's very active. He wants to be made into bread. So like I said, it's literally just bread flour and water, and you take the sourdough starter that you had in the fridge and you take them out and you put equal parts. So if I had like 200 grams of starter here, all I did was add 200 grams of bread flour, 200 grams of water, mixed it together, and that's literally feeding him. Like that's his meal. And then in order to make him into bread, we mix the ingredients and then the sourdough starter, and it's different from other breads because it's a lot slower. Since everything is all natural, you don't get the boost of the like fresh yeast or the active dry yeast. So this is a little slower, but it tastes so much better. The fermentation process gives it a lot of tangy flavor, just a lot of heartiness all over. So that's my favorite Pillsbury. Okay, so it's been 3 hours. Good old bottle of wine later, and he has risen a lot. So puffed up quite a bit in this bowl, and just want to make sure you get all of the sourdough on there. And we are just looking to knock back the air out of this. So he puffed up a bunch, and now we're gonna make him nice and small again. It's a very sticky dough still. It will be sticky the whole time. So you just wanna kind of keep it moving, and you wanna achieve a nice ball of dough. Like if you've ever seen a nice little ball of pizza dough sitting at a pizza shop, that's what you want. So if you just kind of put your hands flat against the table and just kind of go in a rotating motion, it'll create a nice round ball of dough. And then once you have that nice round dough, we're gonna get the banneton ready. This is just basket that gives it those cool little spirals you see on breads. Instant artist work going on, you don't need to do anything. Just grows into it. So once you have the ball of dough ready, you put the smoothest side down. And then he's all ready to sit another 4 more hours. Just want to lightly wrap him in plastic. He is alive, so you don't want to suffocate him. Just a nice light wrap in plastic so he doesn't form a crust. And it's wine time. Okay, so now we're going to take the sourdough. It's nice, really, really puffy. It's like a waterbed. And then you take the parchment. We just want to get it out as gently as possible. So we're just going to take it, lightly flip it over. Now this banneton is very, very well floured, so it should come out very easily. But sourdough does like to grow, so we might just take a second. There it is. And if it sticks, you just want to lightly put it out. This is a very wet dough, so it'll puff up in the oven, but it kind of looks like it's very wet. So we're gonna put a few deep scores into it. Serious bread bakers have this tool. It's just a little razor, and so you can do some fancy stuff, but not everyone has that. So we're just gonna use a really sharp knife, which is actually even easier. So I'm just gonna do almost like a little tic-tac-toe board. You just want to make the knife cuts really sharp and precise. So that's just so the dough has somewhere to go. And then we're going to take this guy. This is a big one. Take him and lower him into the Dutch oven. sure it's not crinkled at the bottom. All good. It's in there, nice and tight. And where it's scored, so it'll kind of puff up and it won't just explode out one spot. It'll have somewhere to go because we made those cuts. And this is going in a 450-degree oven. We'll probably put it in there, well, 15 minutes, and then we're gonna take it out of this so that it'll get nice and crispy and brown. Okay, so it's been 15 minutes, and we nice puffed up sourdough. We're going to very, very carefully take this out, and that's why the parchment comes in handy. Just kind of slowly lift her out of there, and then this goes back in the oven, and it just needs to brown. So literally nice and puffed. Everywhere had somewhere to go, so we didn't have any blowouts on the side. It looks good. It'll be even better once it's browned. Another 15 minutes. Okay, so all out of the oven, all brown all around, as you can see. Nice golden bottom, nice golden everywhere. We just want to temp it, make sure it's fully cooked on the inside, because there's nothing worse than cutting into a piece of bread that's not cooked. We're looking for 208, so perfect. We got 210, beautiful. Anything above 208 is perfect. You see it kind of rose all to one level, so those cuts that we put in it just rose up into it, so it had somewhere to go, and you still get that cool little spiral from the banneton, and you can hear nice and crunchy. Oh yeah, that's gonna be delicious. So, but don't cut into it yet. You gotta wait for it to cool. It wouldn't be worth it if you just smooshed it down to cut into it. It'll be worth it soon. So we have our finished product here. Beautiful. It's all cooled off, so it's ready to be sliced into. And I always like to go right down the middle. You want a nice sharp knife so you're not tearing the bread. And there it is. It has nice big bubbles in it. It has a nice little sheen to it. I like to do thicker slices of sourdough. It really toasts up very nicely. You just put a little butter on it, put it in a nice medium-high pan. Gets nice and crisp on the outside, nice and chewy on the inside. And it looks beautiful, so it makes the perfect gift. And then anything you don't finish, you can use for croutons, and you're made in the shade. You got bread for days. Okay, so now we are going to make focaccia. Focaccia is a flat, crispy Italian bread, and it's rubbed in all sorts of herbs, whatever you have, and sprinkled with some kosher salt, and it's delicious. And it's good to have with dinner, on a sandwich, anything. So we're starting off here with all-purpose flour. We have just flour right in this bowl. I measured it out already. We have 235 grams, and then we have 177 grams of warm water. This is where an instant read thermometer is good to have. So you want it to be right around 115 to activate the active dry yeast. So once you have that, 115, perfect. So we are going to, I have a ½ teaspoon of honey. You're just gonna stir that in, dissolve that with the water, and just get it off the spoon. Perfect. And we're going to put it on our digital scale and measure out 3.5 grams of the rapid rise yeast.
Where can you get that, Christina?
So rapid rise yeast you can find any grocery store in the baking aisle. Some grocery stores I've seen them in the refrigerated section. It's good to keep this in the refrigerator if you're only going to use it around the holidays. Then it'll be good for a few years. If it's in your cabinet, it's only going to be good for probably a few months, I would say. So 3.5. And then once you get the yeast, the honey, in the warm water, you want to take a little whisk and just make sure you dissolve the yeast into the water. You don't want little chunks floating around. And then once it's all dissolved, you don't see any chunks floating. Sounds delicious. You're just going to put that off to the side and it's going to just froth. You're looking for Dunkin' Donuts latte look to it. So it's going to froth away. In the meantime, we have our flour and we are going to put salt. This is a heaping half teaspoon of salt. And just kind of mix that in. Salt kills yeast, so you don't want to have your salt all in the one spot because it'll just kill it. And we don't want that, so. So it has a nice little layer of froth on the top. And once you see that froth, that means it's active, it's alive, and it's ready to go. So you're going to take that and dump it right into your flour salt. And you're just going to bring that together. I like using a rubber spatula because it, instead of the flour sticking to the bowl, it kind of just gets it off of there. And then have a nice clean looking bowl afterwards. Once it starts to come together into a dough, that's when you just want to use your hands. So we're just going to use our hands, and it's almost just like a soft dough. We're not looking for, it's not as wet as sourdough is. It's literally just a nice, you poke it and it's very soft and squishy. So we're just going to bring it fully together until there's no flour left. This one is a no-knead dough, so you don't need to knead it like the first one. So once it's together in a ball, like so, nice ball, then we're going to add olive oil. Some olive oils can get a little bitter depending upon which brand you use, so I definitely encourage to taste before using. The olive oil I had did have a bit of a bitter aftertaste, so I mixed half canola oil, half olive oil. Still gives it that nice olive oil taste. So just getting 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and then you want to work that olive oil in. Oil them up. I'm all ready to go. So you just want to squish it into the dough until there's no olive oil puddled on the outside, and it just kind of soaks in. And then once it soaks up, nice and soft, like I said, we are going to do our folds. So instead of kneading, this dough gets folded.
Yep.
Okay, so ready to do our folds. So you just take the dough and you kind of just slowly stretch it long ways, and then you fold it over itself, and then turn it 90 degrees. Same thing, stretch it long way. You don't want to tear it, you just want to slowly stretch it. It develops the gluten, so you get those nice bubbles when it bakes. Fold, so we did that twice already. We're going to turn it again, stretch. If you see it starting to tear, you can just kind of press it together with your fingers, and it'll just kind of go. And then put that in half, that's 3. And then turn it 90 degrees. Stretch one more time. 4 stretch and folds, and then that goes right into the bowl for 30 minutes. So once it's all ready to be proofed for 30 minutes, we have to do this 4 times, so who can keep track of that? So what I like to do is write 30 4 times on a piece of paper, and then once we did our first stretch and fold and that proofs for 30 minutes, you want to X that. So you're going to X off each one after it's done proofing. So 30 minutes from now, we're going to come back, we're going to X off the next one, do the next stretch and fold. And then once all of the 30 minutes are X'd out, from that point, we're going to take it out and get it ready to bake.
Go for it.
Okay, so after our last stretch and fold and our last proof, 30 minutes, we have our dough here all ready to go. We're going to put it in the pan and have it proof one last time before the oven. So, before we get it in the pan, I want to make sure it'll come out. I like to parchment the bottom of the pan. You don't want it to stick because it's too much hard work for it to stick. So what I like to do is take parchment and you're going to fold it. You're going to fold it into almost like you're making a snowflake. So you fold it in half, fold it in half. So this part is where all the corners meet. And you just keep folding it in half until it's manageable to rip. So you just want to keep the part where all the corners meet together. And then once you get small enough, easy enough to rip, you're going to put it right in the center like a clock. And then right on the edge, you're going to just kind of put your finger where that should be ripped and rip it. And then get a nice circle. Perfect. You don't need it to be perfect. It's just, it prevents it from sticking in the center. So once you have that, we are going to place 1 tablespoon of oil right on the dough. And I'm just going to pick the dough up and just make sure that the outside is nice and coated in olive oil. Make sure it's nice and coated all around. Once you're coated all around, you're going to put your dough right on the parchment and you're just going to lightly press to the sides, but no tearing. So nice and light. It's a very soft dough. It's like working with a cloud. And if it's giving you a hard time, sometimes it shrinks back up. If you kind of just pull up on it, just make sure you don't rip it. Just take it and pull up. It usually works just fine. And then we're going to wrap the top of that and it's going to proof in a warm spot for an hour.
1 hour proofing later.
And it has puffed up a little bit. And now we're going to get it ready for the oven. So I have a little bit of cold water here. We are going to play the piano for a second. So you just dip your fingers in the cold water, shake off any excess, and you're just gonna go in and poke it almost all the way to the bottom. So once you reach the bottom, you go all the way in. You just kind of poke it all around. is what gives focaccia signature little nooks and crannies and gets it nice and crispy. So you don't want to knock all the air out of it, just enough for the topper to go evenly in all the crevices. So we have the topper here. You can really use any herbs you want, just whatever your favorite herbs are. Today we have parsley, basil, and thyme in here. It's just herbs, olive oil, and water. And you just mix that together, and garlic. Can't forget the garlic. And you just want to pour that on top, nice and evenly. Just fill all those little holes. So we have this all ready for the oven. We do need to hit it with some salt. I don't like to mix the salt in with the topper because when you dump it, it's too uneven. You don't want the salt to be just in one spot or else it just won't taste good. So now that the top is nice and moist, we're just going to sprinkle, I like using kosher salt, just evenly over the top. Nice and even. You can go pretty generous with it. And then once that's ready, we're ready for the oven. Oh yeah. So just came out of the oven, and the outside is very, very crisp, which you're looking for a nice golden brown. The bottom, you just want a light golden. Depending upon what pan you use, it'll be darker or lighter. The glass pans, they get a little slower to heating up, so they don't come out as dark at the bottom, but still perfectly ready to eat. This is hot out of the oven, so it'd be good to serve fresh as is with dinner, or if you let it cool, you can cut it in half, use it for a sandwich. Pretty much good for anything, but I like it straight out of the oven, dipped in a little bit of olive oil, maybe a little bit of balsamic in there. So if you're like me and make obscene amounts of focaccia at a time for no reason at all, and you have a lot left over, if you find yourself in that scenario, then they make the best pizzas. So if you don't cut it at all, so if you let it come out of the oven, let it cool, put it in the refrigerator for a few days, and come back to it and say, hey, I gotta use that, you can take your focaccia, and you wanna use a bread knife so it doesn't, just so it's safer. But you wanna go across it evenly, cut it completely in half, and then flip over the half, and you have 2 pizza crusts ready to go with whatever toppings you have in the fridge. And kids love it, adults love it. It'll be the best thing ever. You made your own pizza dough, essentially. Focaccia pizzas. Use up your cheeses, use up your meats, whatever you have lying around, pepperoni. My favorite is pesto, some fresh mozzarella, tomato, right out of the garden. Balsamic glaze when it comes out of the oven. If you do that, bake off pizza right around 400 degrees for 20 minutes. You're just looking for the cheese to be melted and for the focaccia to be nice and crispy. Okay, so we have our hearty cubed up bread here, all ready to be tossed. And we have our melted butter with garlic that we just sweat out just a little bit to get the flavor out. And we took the easy road out. We put in pesto here so we don't have to chop up a bunch of vegetables or a bunch of herbs. So we just put in pesto right in so it's already evenly distributed. And And we are going to mix that together. So you don't want to make stuffing. You don't want to like stir the bread. You kind of want to fluff it around, maybe give it a little toss just to coat it. Just want a nice even coating of butter. And once you get that, once it's nice and evenly coated, everything looks like it has butter on it, no dry spots. We're going to put in a half cup of Parmesan. This is just grated Parm. And again, I'm going to toss that. Love my handy dandy rubber spatula. Make sure nothing's sticking to the bowl. We'll toss. Don't be afraid to make a mess. Unless you have to clean it, then don't make a mess. So we have salt, pepper. We're going to give it a little pinch of salt, a little crank of pepper. The Parmesan adds lots of saltiness to it, so we don't need to go crazy. And one last stir. The Parmesan is like sticking to the butter on the bread. Everything's coming together nicely. Have a parchment lined baking sheet, and you just want to make sure that there's no clusters of bread. You want everything to bake evenly, and croutons is more of a drying out process. It doesn't take a long time, but you want it to not get too dark. Just stay nice and light and just kind of slowly dry out. And lucky for you, I got some ready right here. Nice, you can see the golden brown is a nice deep golden brown, and it should be completely crisp all the way through. We're not making like panzanella salad, has the bread crispy on the outside and kind of almost soft on the inside. We want this crisp all the way through. Let's find a good one. All the way through. You can snack on these all day. And here we have it. Sourdough, focaccia, croutons. You're ready for a party. You brought the wine. Thank you for supporting the Harvest Evening celebration. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Good night.